The day my wife left me, she didn't pack a suitcase. She packed a yoga mat. No, that's not quite right. She just picked up her favorite turquoise mat, the one she said grounded her, and walked out the door with it tucked under her arm. Said it was all she needed for her new path with Kai. Kai, her yoga instructor. My name is Alex, or at least that's what I was called, before I became the guy whose wife left him for a yoga instructor. Sarah and I had been together for 10 years, married for 5. We had the perfect house, the 2 dogs, the Sunday morning brunch tradition. We even had a slightly annoying but mostly endearing habit of finishing each other's sentences. Our life was comfortable, predictable, and I thought, happy. I thought we were building something strong, brick by brick, moment by moment. Turns out, she was building a new life, plank by plank, downward dog by downward dog with someone else. It started subtly, like a soft stretch before a full-blown workout. Sarah got into yoga a couple of years ago. At first, it was just an hour class twice a week at the local community center. Then she found Kai's studio, Zen Flow, and suddenly it was a lifestyle. More classes, workshops, retreats. She came home glowing, talking about inner peace and alignment and releasing blocked energy. I'd nod along, happy she found something she loved. I even tried a class once. It was hot, sweaty, and I felt like a rusty robot trying to fold itself into a pretzel. Not my thing. But I supported her. I really did. I bought her fancy yoga pants, a new mat, even that weird cushion she meditated on. I was the supportive husband, cheering from the sidelines of her spiritual journey. Looking back, the signs were probably there, waving like little flags in a gentle breeze, that I just mistook for a normal day. She started spending more time at the studio, sometimes volunteering after classes. She'd talk about Kai more and more. Kai said this. Kai believes that. Kai's energy is just so calming. I just thought he was a good teacher, a guru figure for her new passion. He was always on her Instagram feed too, striking impossible poses with a serene smile, usually surrounded by his devoted students, Sarah often among them, looking as serene as he did. The distance between us wasn't a sudden chasm, but a slow creeping fog. Our Sunday brunches became less about us, and more about her recapping Kai's latest philosophy. Our movie nights were replaced by her needing quiet time to meditate. Our touch became less frequent, less lingering. I'd reach for her hand and she'd gently pull away, saying she needed space, needed to focus on herself. I blamed work stress, my own fatigue. Kept telling myself we'd get back to normal, that this was just a phase, a temporary shift. The day it all shattered was a Tuesday. I remember the date perfectly. May 14th. I came home from work, ready for our usual quiet dinner. The house felt too still, even for a Tuesday. Sarah was sitting on our couch, the one we'd picked out together, her back straight, almost unnaturally so. She wasn't meditating, she was waiting. She didn't start with a fight, or an accusation, or even an apology. She just looked at me with those calm, clear eyes that used to melt me and said, "Alex, I am leaving you." The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. My brain, slow and stupid, tried to process them. Leaving me? For what? A retreat? You just went on one last month. She shook her head. A small, sad movement. Number, I am leaving you for good. I am leaving you for Kai. It was like a punch to the gut. The air left my lungs in a whoosh. I actually took a step back, as if the words had physical force. Kai, your yoga instructor? Are you serious? My voice sounded foreign, reedy. Yes, Alex, I am. We've been together for a while now. He understands me in a way you never could. He speaks to my soul. He helps me connect with my true self. I wanted to scream. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to shake her until her true self snapped back into reality. He helps you connect with your true self? Sarah, we built a life. We had plans. What about our plans? What about us? There is no us anymore, Alex. Not the way there was. I've evolved. I've grown. You haven't. You are still stuck in the same place, doing the same things. I need someone who can grow with me, who understands my spiritual path. My spiritual path involves paying the mortgage and making sure the dogs get walked. I yelled, the anger finally bubbling up hot and raw. It felt ridiculous even as I said. My life reduced to mortgage payments and dog walks, while hers was a grand journey of self-discovery. She flinched at my raised voice, her serenity cracking just for a second. I am sorry, Alex, I really am. But I have to follow my heart. Kai and I were meant to be. He's found me my truth. Your truth? Your truth is a 20-something yoga guru who probably makes a living off women like you, looking for something to fill a void. I spat, the words bitter on my tongue. I immediately regretted it. I sounded desperate, pathetic. She stood up then, graceful even in her departure. She went to the entryway, picked up that turquoise yoga mat and held it to her chest. It felt symbolic, like she was taking a piece of our shared peace with her, replacing it with some new airy concept I couldn't grasp. I've already packed a bag of essentials, she said, her voice softer now, almost gentle. A friend is picking me up. I'll arrange to get the rest of my things next week, a friend. Was it Kai? Was he waiting outside in his eco-friendly car, radiating his calming energy while my world imploded? I couldn't speak. My mouth was dry, my throat constricted. I just watched her. She paused at the door, her hand on the knob. She looked at me one last time, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Pity, maybe, or regret, or maybe just the peaceful emptiness of someone who has shed an old skin. Then she was gone. The door clicked shut, a final definitive sound. The house was silent again, but this time it wasn't just still. It was empty. The silence was a roaring in my ears, filled with the echo of her words. I am leaving you for Kai. And all that was left was me, standing in the middle of our living room. The space where we'd laughed and argued and dreamed, staring at the empty spot where a turquoise yoga mat should have been. My heart felt like it had been ripped out, stomped on, and then gently placed back in my chest, still beating, but broken. The first few weeks were a blur of existence, not living. The house felt like a tomb. Every object, every scent, every shadow held a memory of Sarah. Her favorite coffee mug still sat on the counter, a faint lipstick stain on the rim. Her side of the bed was cold and untouched. The dogs wandered around, confused, searching for her, their little noses nudging my hand as if asking, "W, here is Mom." I couldn't even give them an answer. I tried to keep up appearances at work, but my focus was shot. I'd stare at my computer screen, the words blurring, my mind replaying that Tuesday night over and over. Every detail, every inflection of her voice, every cold, rational reason she gave for dismantling our life. You haven't grown. He understands me. My spiritual path. It all sounded like a bunch of New Age nonsense to me. A flimsy excuse for a cruel betrayal. My friends tried to help. David, my best friend since college, came over with a six-pack and a sad pizza. He sat with me in silence for a long time, occasionally offering a gruff, "She's an idiot, Alex. You are better off." But even that didn't help. I didn't want to be better off. I wanted her back. I wanted the old Sarah, the one who laughed at my bad jokes and snored softly next to me at night. My mom called every day, her voice thick with concern. "Are you eating, honey? Have you showered?" I lied, of course. My diet consisted mostly of stale cereal and the occasional microwaved meal. Showering felt like an effort akin to climbing Mount Everest. I spent most of my time on the couch, wrapped in one of Sarah's old blankets, watching reruns of shows we used to watch together. Each episode was a fresh stab to the heart. This was our show. This was our spot. This was our life. Now it was just me, a ghost in my own house. Then the obsession started. It was subtle at first, just a casual search on Google. Zen Flow Yoga. I wanted to see this place, this temple of enlightenment where my marriage had gone to die. The website was slick, all soothing colors and stock photos of ridiculously flexible people. And there he was, Kai. His bio described him as a visionary spiritual guide, a healer of souls. He looked exactly how I imagined. Lean, impossibly calm, with a knowing smile that probably promised transcendence. He wore loose linen pants and a white t-shirt that barely concealed the surprisingly muscled physique. He was handsome in that annoyingly serene way. Then I moved to social media, Facebook, Instagram. His pages were public, a curated gallery of his enlightened life. Pictures of him leading huge classes, his eyes closed in what looked like blissful meditation. Photos of him surrounded by his disciples, all smiling, all looking like they'd just found the meaning of life. And there, buried in the comments, or sometimes tagged in a group photo, was Sarah. Looking happier, freer, more radiant than I had seen her in years. It was like a knife, twisting in an open wound. I'd scroll for hours, hating myself for it, but unable to stop. I saw photos of their community meals at the studio, pictures of them on what looked like a couple's retreat, hiking in the mountains holding hands. My Sarah, holding his hand, laughing at his jokes. Sharing a life I was supposed to be a part of. It was torture, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. I was searching for answers, for a reason, for anything that would explain how 10 years could just evaporate like morning dew. Through his social media, I started noticing other things. Kai's studio wasn't just a small local place. It was growing fast. Posted about new expansions, new programs, bigger events. He often thanked his amazing community and his generous patrons. Sometimes he'd specifically mention our biggest sponsor or the incredible support from our primary benefactor. There wasn't a name, not usually, just a vague reference to this financial backing that allowed Zen Flow to flourish. I didn't think much of it at the time, just another detail in the glamorous life of the man who stole my wife. It was just a phrase, a background detail, biggest sponsor. I tucked it away in the back of my mind, a tiny, insignificant piece of information in the vast, painful mosaic of my shattered life. The dogs would jump on the couch, licking my face, pulling me back to the present, to the reality of my unwashed hair and the lingering smell of stale pizza. They needed walks. They needed food. They needed me. I was barely managing to keep myself alive, let alone them. Guilt would wash over me, a fresh wave in the sea of my despair. They didn't ask for this. They didn't choose to have their family ripped apart by a self-proclaimed guru and his flexible flock. One afternoon I was scrolling through Kai's Instagram feed again, feeling that familiar mix of self-loathing and morbid fascination. He had posted a picture of his new enormous yoga studio space, a gleaming minimalist haven. The caption thanked his incredible investors and our lead sponsor, without whom none of this would be possible. This time he tagged a company account. It was a local wellness brand, one that sold organic supplements and high-end athleisure wear. I recognized the name. It was huge, that was it then. The biggest sponsor was a company. It made sense. Big yoga studios need big money. This provided no real comfort, but it did give me a name to put to the vague concept of support. The name was Viridia Wellness Inc. Just a name. A company. Nothing personal. Not yet. The days bled into weeks. Each one a carbon copy of the last. Wake up. Feel the crushing weight of loneliness. Force down some food. Go to work. Pretend to be functional. Come home, collapse on the couch. Scroll. Despair. Sleep. It was a monotonous, soul-crushing cycle. Every memory, every song, every street corner was a fresh stab. Sarah was everywhere and nowhere. Her ghost haunted every room, every thought. I tried to avoid places we used to frequent. Our favorite coffee shop, the park where we walked the dogs, the grocery store where we argued playfully over cereal brands. But the city wasn't big enough to completely escape her. And I suppose deep down, I wasn't trying hard enough. Part of me, the masochistic part, wanted to see her. Just to confirm my pain, to press on the bruise. The universe, in its twisted sense of humor, decided to grant that wish. It happened on a Saturday afternoon. I had finally managed to drag myself out of the house, determined to do something, anything other than mope. I was at the local farmer's market, a place we used to love, looking at some sad-looking organic kale when I saw them. They were walking hand in hand, laughing. Sarah, radiant in a flowing sundress, her hair catching the sunlight. And Kai, in his signature loose linen, his arm around her, his head thrown back in genuine laughter. They looked like they belonged on the cover of a magazine about enlightened living. They looked perfect. They looked happy. My breath hitched. My heart hammered against my ribs. A trapped bird desperate to escape. My stomach churned. It felt like someone had ripped open my chest and poured acid directly onto my exposed heart. All the air left the space around me. The bustling market faded into a blurry background. There was only them. They were heading towards the organic juice stand, blissfully unaware of my presence. I ducked behind a stall selling artisanal jams, my hands shaking, my mind screaming, "Don't let them see you. Don't let them see you like this." I felt exposed, pathetic, a raw nerve ending. I watched them, hidden in the shadows of the tent. Sarah leaned her head on Kai's shoulder. He kissed her hair. A small, intimate gesture that used to be ours. A gesture that now felt like a punch to the face. Casual intimacy, the comfort they shared, it was unbearable. They weren't just a fling. This was real for them. It was a relationship, built on the ashes of mine. I heard Sarah's laugh, bright and clear. It was the laugh I loved, the one that used to light up my darkest days. Now it was for him. Every fiber of my being screamed. Jealousy, rage, profound sadness all tangled together into a suffocating knot in my chest. I felt a hot, prickling sensation behind my eyes. Tears. Pathetic. I wouldn't cry here. Here, not in public. Not for them to see. They bought their juices, still smiling, still wrapped in their own little bubble of serene happiness. They walked past my hiding spot, close enough that I could smell Sarah's perfume, the one I bought her for her birthday last year. My hand reached out instinctively, wanting to touch her, to pull her back, to scream, "What about me? What about us?" But I stayed hidden, frozen by a mixture of fear and self-preservation. They disappeared into the crowd, leaving me gasping for air, leaning against the wooden stall, trying desperately to compose myself. My legs felt weak, my hands clammy. I felt like I was going to throw up. Kale, the jams, the cheerful chatter of the market vendors. It all felt surreal, alien. How could the world just keep spinning when mine had stopped? I stumbled out of the market, not caring where I was going, just needing to escape. I walked aimlessly for what felt like hours. The image of them, laughing, touching, burned into my retina. Every step was heavy, every breath a struggle. I felt like I was wading through quicksand, sinking deeper and deeper into a swamp of despair. When I finally made it back to my desolate house, I collapsed on the couch. The same couch Sarah had sat on when she delivered the death blow. The dogs, sensing my distress, huddled around me, whining softly. I pulled them close, burying my face in their fur, and finally the tears came. None other than you. I cried for Sarah, for our lost future, for the betrayal, for the naive idiot I had been. I cried until my eyes were swollen, my throat raw, and my body shook with exhaustion. This was it. This was rock bottom. I had seen her, seen them, and it had confirmed everything I feared. She was gone. Truly gone. And I was left alone, in the wreckage of a life I no longer recognized. The thought of getting up, of facing another day, felt like an insurmountable task. I just wanted to disappear, to cease to exist. The pain was too much. It was physical, it was mental, it was absolute. I lay there, curled in a ball, feeling utterly defeated, the lowest I had ever been in my entire life. The lowest point is usually where something has to give, right? After that farmer's market encounter, I didn't just feel heartbroken. I felt utterly hollowed out. I skipped work for 2 days, telling my boss I had the flu, which wasn't entirely a lie. My body ached, my head pounded, and I felt like I was constantly on the verge of vomiting. David, bless his persistent soul, called me non-stop. When I finally picked up, my voice a croak, he showed up at my door an hour later. He took one look at my disheveled appearance, the empty pizza boxes, the mournful dogs, and his face hardened. All right, that's it, Alex. This pity party is officially over. He didn't ask, he just started picking up trash. He washed the dishes, walked the dogs, and then he stood in front of me, hands on his hips. You are going out tonight. No, I am not. I mumbled, pulling the blanket higher. Yes, you are. And tomorrow we're going for a hike. And the day after, you are going to work. You are not going to let them win, Alex. You are not going to let her see you like this. The them stung, but the idea of her seeing me like this, broken and defeated, was a powerful motivator. What am I supposed to do? Pretend everything's fine? Number, you are going to start living again. One small step at a time. Tonight, we're going to that new bar down the street. No pressure, just a drink. Then home. Deal? I reluctantly agreed. I showered, shaved, and put on the least wrinkled clothes I could find. My reflection in the mirror was still a stranger, gaunt and tired, but at least I didn't smell like a landfill anymore. The new bar, the Copper Mug, was surprisingly cozy, not too loud, with soft lighting and a jazz band playing in the corner. I nursed a beer, barely listening to David's cheerful chatter about work. My eyes darted around, avoiding eye contact, half expecting to see Sarah and Kai swan in, radiating their damned zen. They didn't. And that, surprisingly, was a relief. Over the next few weeks, David pushed me gently but firmly. We went to the gym. We cooked actual meals. He forced me to go to a concert, even though I hated the band. Slowly, imperceptibly, the fog began to lift. I wasn't happy, not by a long shot. But I wasn't actively miserable every second of every day. The crying fits lessened. The desire to just lie in bed all day faded. I started going to a new coffee shop on my way to work, one completely on the other side of town from where Sarah used to go. It was a small, independent place, always bustling with people typing on laptops or chatting quietly. It became my small sanctuary, a place where I felt anonymous, unburdened by past memories. I'd sit there nursing a latte, trying to read the news, anything to distract my mind. One morning, I was engrossed in an article, probably about some obscure political scandal, when I heard a soft voice next to my table. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" I looked up. A woman was standing there, holding a laptop bag and a half-finished cup of coffee. She had kind eyes, framed by dark, intelligent eyebrows and a warm smile. She wasn't overtly beautiful, but there was an easy confidence about her, a quiet strength. She had light brown hair pulled back into a neat ponytail, and she was dressed smartly, but casually, in a tailored blazer and jeans. My first thought, incredibly, wasn't about Sarah. It was just a simple human observation. She looked pleasant. I quickly checked the empty chair at my small table. "Oh no, it's free. Please?" I gestured to it. "Thanks. It's impossible to find a spot in here sometime." She settled into the chair, placing her laptop bag carefully on the floor. "I am Veronica, by the way." She extended a hand. "Alex." I shook it. Her grip was firm, her hand warm. "Nice to meet you, Alex. I always see you here. You are always so focused." She gestured towards my laptop. I chuckled, a rusty sound. Just trying to make sense of the world, I guess. Or escape it, depending on the day. She gave a knowing smile. "Tell me about it." "My world is usually a whirlwind of spreadsheets and strategy meetings. This is my little oasis." She gestured around the bustling coffee shop. We fell into an easy conversation. We talked about the best coffee in the city, about frustrating commutes, about the absurdities of modern life. She seemed genuinely interested, not just politely tolerating me. She was witty, intelligent, and surprisingly down to earth for someone who seemed so put together. She talked about her work, something in the wellness industry, without going into too much detail. She mentioned she managed a few different brands, worked with various partnerships and sponsorships. I nodded along, not really paying attention to the specific jargon. It was just background noise, a pleasant hum to our conversation. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of something that wasn't pain or sadness. It wasn't romance, not yet. It was just connection, a simple human connection with someone new. Someone who didn't know my story, didn't know about Sarah, or Kai, or the gaping hole in my chest. She just saw Alex, a guy in a coffee shop, and that was a refreshing change. We ended up talking for almost an hour, until she checked her watch and gasped. "Oh goodness, I have to run. Big meeting." "It was really lovely meeting you, Alex." "You too, Veronica." She smiled, gathered her things and walked out, leaving behind a subtle scent of something fresh and clean, like citrus and rain. I watched her go, and for a moment, the world felt a little less heavy, a little less bleak. It wasn't a miracle cure, but it was a crack in the wall, a tiny sliver of light. A reminder that there were other people in the world, other conversations to be had, other connections to be made. It was a start, a very small, very tentative start. I kept going back to that coffee shop, came less about avoiding Sarah's old haunts, and more about a quiet hope that Veronica would be there. And often she was. We'd exchange pleasantries, chat about our days, sometimes just share a quiet moment of focus at our separate tables. It was a slow, gentle unfolding, like a cautious flower blooming after a long winter. I didn't push for anything more. I was still too bruised, too wary. But her presence was a comforting balm, a quiet assurance that life in some form continued. Veronica was different from Sarah. Whereas Sarah had been ethereal and sometimes a little flighty, chasing the next spiritual trend, Veronica was grounded, pragmatic, and sharp. She had a dry wit that made me genuinely laugh, a feeling I hadn't experienced in months. She talked about her work with passion, describing the challenges of running a business, the satisfaction of seeing a project come to fruition. She worked in brand development and marketing for a larger corporation that focused on health and wellness. Tried to uplift local businesses, identify promising new trends, and connect people with products that truly improve their well-being. She'd explained one morning. She started inviting me to join her for lunch occasionally, usually quick affairs between her meetings. She never pushed, never pried about my past. She just listened when I talked, and she shared her own experiences freely. I found myself opening up cautiously at first about my work, my interests, my mundane daily struggles. I didn't mention Sarah, not directly. It was too raw, too complicated to unload on someone new. But the weight of that unspoken truth was always there, a phantom limb. One afternoon, over salads and iced tea, she was talking about a particularly challenging project. "It's this yoga studio," she said, sighing dramatically. "We're their biggest sponsor, and they're just a handful. The owner, he's a visionary, I'll give him that. But a businessman, not so much." She rolled her eyes playfully. "A yoga studio." My stomach gave a little lurch. "Oh? What's it called?" I tried to keep my voice casual, but my heart had already started to beat a little faster. "Zen Flow," she said, taking a sip of her tea. "You probably haven't heard of it, unless you are really into that scene. It's growing though. We've invested a lot into their expansion, their new online classes, their retreats. The world tilted. Zen Flow." The name hit me like a physical blow. My vision blurred for a moment. This wasn't just a yoga studio. This was the yoga studio, Kai's studio, the one Sarah had chosen over me. The one that had swallowed my wife whole. My mind raced, connecting the dots I had unknowingly laid months ago. The biggest sponsor Kai had mentioned on social media, the Viridia Wellness Inc. I had looked up Veronica. She worked for a company that sponsored ZenFlow. She was the sponsor, or at least the representative of the biggest sponsor. Cold dread washed over me, immediately followed by a strange, dark flicker of something else. Irony. Revenge. A twisted, perverse sense of destiny. "ZenFlow," I repeated, my voice a little rougher than I intended. "Right? I think I've heard of it. Isn't that Kai's place?" Veronica nodded, oblivious to the earthquake happening inside me. "That's right, Kai. He's a character, that one. Very charismatic. People really respond to him. Sarah, my associate, handles a lot of the day-to-day with him. She adores him, thinks he's just the bee's knees." Sarah, I thought, my mind racing. A Sarah who works with Veronica, who adores Kai. Not my Sarah, it had to be a common name. I clung to that thought, a desperate lifeline in a sea of rising panic. "So you work closely with Kai then?" I asked, trying to sound genuinely curious, not like I was extracting information from a witness. "Oh, not me personally, not as much as some of my team. I oversee the accounts, manage the big picture. But I've met him a few times. He's definitely got something. People flock to him. It's a goldmine for us despite his quirks," she chuckled. I felt a sudden jolt. A chill that had nothing to do with the iced tea. Could it be? What kind of quirks? I asked, pushing the limits, needing to know more even if it destroyed me. Oh, just the usual guru stuff. A bit self-absorbed, always talking about his vision, sometimes flaky with deadlines. You know the type. Wants the big money but doesn't want to deal with the paperwork, she said, waving a dismissive hand. But he delivers results. The studio's numbers are through the roof. Our leisure line has seen a huge bump thanks to their endorsement. I took a shaky breath. This was too much. The woman I was starting to like, the one who was making me feel human again, was directly connected to the man who ruined my life. It was a bizarre, cruel twist of fate. Part of me wanted to stand up, scream, and run out of the restaurant. Another part, the darker, more curious part, wanted to lean in to learn everything I could. I looked at Veronica, truly looked at her, her kind eyes, her open smile. She was completely unaware of the bombshell she had just dropped on me. She just saw a new friend, a pleasant lunch companion. How could I tell her? How could I explain that her biggest client was the man who ran off with my wife? And what would that even mean for our nascent connection? The internal conflict raged. Do I just walk away? Do I reveal everything and risk scaring her off? Or do I continue? See where this strange, uncomfortable thread leads. Thought of knowing more about Kai, about his life, about Sarah, through this unsuspecting connection was a morbidly tempting prospect. It felt like I was standing at a crossroads, one path leading to quiet healing, the other to a dangerous, intriguing game. And in my still fragile state, the intrigue was surprisingly potent. I decided to keep my composure. For now, I forced a smile. Sounds interesting. A real challenge, I bet. Veronica nodded. Definitely never a dull moment. But hey, it keeps things exciting, right? Right? Exciting. The understatement of the year. My heart was pounding, my hands were clammy, and the world had just become a much, much smaller, an infinitely more complicated place. I had just met the biggest sponsor of my ex-wife's yoga instructor, and I was dating her, and she had no idea. The immediate shock of discovering Veronica's connection to Kai was quickly replaced by a storm of conflicting emotions. My first instinct was to pull away. This was too much, too convoluted, too painful. But then another feeling crept in, a darker, more compelling one, curiosity. And beneath that, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper of something like opportunity. I spent the next few days in a state of agitated confusion. Every time Veronica and I met, every time she casually mentioned Zen, Flow, or Kai, my stomach would knot. I found myself listening with an intensity I hadn't realized I possessed, picking up crumbs of information about Kai's operations, about his personality from Veronica's anecdotes. She mostly talked about him from a business perspective, his flaky communication, his inflated ego, his surprising knack for self-promotion. She never mentioned Sarah, which was a small mercy. It meant my Sarah, wasn't part of her professional world. At least not in a way that Veronica deemed significant enough to discuss. Or maybe she was just another face in Kai's army of followers. The internal monologue was relentless. Is this a sign? Is this karma? Am I a terrible person for even considering this? Part of me wanted to confess everything to Veronica, to lay out the messy truth of my broken heart and her unwitting connection to it. But what would that achieve? Would she understand? Would she be repulsed? Would it destroy the fragile trust we had started to build? I didn't want to risk it. Not yet. And then there was the undeniable fact. I genuinely liked Veronica. She was smart, funny, and refreshingly direct. She challenged my cynical worldview without being preachy, and she made me feel seen not as the guy whose wife left him, but as Alex. Our conversations were easy and engaging. She was slowly, painstakingly pulling me out of the abyss I'd been living in. Did I really want to jeopardize that for a convoluted confession? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I had options. I could use this proximity. Not necessarily for outright revenge, but for understanding, for insight, for a sense of control in a situation where I had felt utterly powerless. I could learn about Kai, not through Sarah's idealized lens, but through the pragmatic, business-oriented perspective of his main financial backer. Maybe knowing more about him, about his true character beyond the guru facade, would help me finally process what happened. So, I decided to keep quiet. I continued to date Veronica. It felt like walking on a tightrope, a high-stakes performance where one wrong word could send everything crashing down. Each time she spoke about Kai, I'd feign casual interest, asking follow-up questions that were designed to extract more details without raising suspicion. So, Kai's expanding to another city, you said? I'd ask, picking at my food. Yes, it's been a nightmare. He's so particular about the energy of the new space. And his demands for the decor are just wild. She'd sigh, then laugh. But our projections show huge growth potential. I'd nod, a casual smile on my face while inside my stomach churned. So Sarah was moving with him then. Or would she be flying between cities? The logistics of their new enlightened life became clearer through Veronica's practical, unromantic lens. I learned that Kai was much younger than I'd initially assumed, barely 30. Veronica described him as charming, but with a serious God complex. She complained about his occasional disregard for budgets, his tendency to disappear on spiritual journeys without notice, leaving her team scrambling. She saw him as a promising, albeit high-maintenance investment. She didn't see him as a spiritual savior. That perspective was oddly comforting. It chipped away at the pedestal Sarah had placed him on. He was just a guy. A guy with good marketing and a knack for convincing people to pay for enlightenment. The relationship with Veronica deepened. We started spending weekends together. We hiked. We cooked. We went to movies. I met some of her friends, normal, grounded people, who seemed genuinely happy for her. She was slowly, steadily, chipping away at the fortress I had built around my heart. I started to feel genuine affection for her. Her presence was calming, not in the airy spiritual way Sarah had described Kai, but in a solid, reassuring way. She was present. She was kind. This made the secret all the more difficult to bear. Every time she looked at me with those open, trusting eyes, I felt a pang of guilt. Was I using her? Was this truly a new relationship, or was it just a twisted form of reconnaissance? The lines were blurring, and I didn't know how to untangle them. I found myself genuinely caring for Veronica, which complicated the whole bizarre setup. Sometimes, after a particularly intimate moment, or a heartfelt conversation where she shared a vulnerability, I'd almost blurt it out. Hey, by the way, the guy you are spending millions on, he stole my wife. Fun, right? But the words would catch in my throat. What if she hated me? What if she thought I was a manipulative creep? The risk was too high. I was finally, tentatively, finding a path forward, and I was terrified of destroying it. The oddest part was the subtle satisfaction I got from the indirect contact. Hearing about Kai's business woes, his minor professional frustrations, even the occasional slip-up about his personal life. Though Veronica kept things professional, she sometimes let out a huff about his complicated personal life when he caused scheduling headaches. It was like getting a glimpse behind the curtain. The all-knowing guru wasn't so all-knowing after all. He was just a human, with human flaws and human problems. And that, in a strange way, made him less threatening, less of a perfect, unreachable ideal. It reduced him from a god to a man, a flawed man, just like me. I knew this couldn't last forever. This secret, this strange, tangled web of connections would eventually unravel. But for now, I was caught in it. Part intrigued, part terrified, and surprisingly, part hopeful. Hopeful that maybe, just maybe, this strange path was leading me somewhere new, somewhere better, even if it was paved with the complicated truths of my past. The temptation, of course, was always there. A dark whisper in the back of my mind. You are dating his biggest sponsor. You could ruin him. You could take everything from him, just like he took everything from you. The idea would surface, cold and glittering, a seductive thought promising a balm for my still aching heart. I'd imagine subtly planting doubts in Veronica's mind about Kai's professionalism, his financial acumen, his dedication. Nothing overt, just little seeds of suspicion. Does he really have a solid business plan, or is he just riding the wellness wave? Are his numbers as good as they seem, or is it all smoke and mirrors? I could suggest she look into other potential investments, redirect funds, slowly cut off his supply. It would be a slow, quiet sabotage, perfectly engineered for maximum impact. A clean, business-savvy revenge. I even entertained scenarios where I'd engineering a chance encounter between Veronica and Sarah, orchestrating a moment where the truth would spill out in a dramatic, satisfying way. Picture it. Veronica introduces me as her new boyfriend. Sarah's jaw drops. Kai looks uncomfortable, and I stand there, cool and collected, finally getting my moment of vindication. The fantasy played out vividly in my mind, a delicious, vengeful script. But then, the logical, moral part of my brain would kick in. What would be the true cost of such an act? First, there was Veronica. She was good, kind, and genuinely invested in her work. She was trying to do something positive, supporting a business she believed in, even if that business was headed by a spiritual charlatan. If I manipulated her, used her trust for my own vengeful purposes, I would be no better than Sarah, arguably worse. I would be hurting an innocent person, someone who had done nothing but show me kindness when I was at my lowest. The thought of seeing the hurt and betrayal in Veronica's eyes, realizing I had used her, was a powerful deterrent. I was finally building something genuine with her, something that felt real and honest. Trading that for a momentary satisfaction of revenge seemed utterly self-defeating. And what about the consequences for me? If Veronica ever discovered my true, darker motives, our relationship would be irrevocably shattered. I would lose the one person who was helping me heal, who was bringing light back into my life. I would be alone again, but this time it would be my own fault. I would be confirming all of Sarah's accusations about me being stuck and incapable of growth. Was I willing to sink to that level? To become a person I wouldn't recognize, all for the sake of getting back at someone who likely didn't even think about me anymore? The internal debate raged. One evening, after a particularly good date with Veronica, where we just sat and talked for hours, sharing intimate details about our lives, I went home and stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My face was still tired, but there was a flicker of something new in my eyes, something resembling peace. Was I going to throw that away? Was I going to become a bitter, vengeful shadow of my former self? I realized that pursuing revenge wouldn't bring Sarah back. It wouldn't magically erase the pain of her leaving. It would only create more pain, more bitterness, and likely more loneliness. It wouldn't make me feel better in the long run. It would just make me feel complicit in the very kind of emotional manipulation I had despised in Sarah's departure. This revelation was sobering. It wasn't about Sarah anymore. It was about me. It was about the kind of person I wanted to be. Did I want to be the victim who lashed out, or the person who picked himself up, moved on, and found genuine happiness? I started to actively push away the vengeful thoughts. When they arose, I acknowledged them, then let them go. It was like a new kind of meditation, one focused on self-preservation and moral integrity, not on finding an inner truth in some lotus position. I focused on Veronica, on the present, on the good things that were slowly, steadily building between us. My feelings for Veronica were growing, becoming deeper and more complex than I had anticipated. She was a breath of fresh air, a steady anchor in my turbulent world. She made me laugh, she challenged me, and she simply existed with me in a way that felt comforting and right. The thought of hurting her, of jeopardizing what we were building, became unbearable. The thought of Sarah and Kai, which had once consumed me, began to fade into the background. They were still there, a constant hum of awareness, but they no longer dominated my every thought, every waking moment. Veronica was helping me see a future that didn't involve the ghost of my past. She was showing me that healing wasn't about erasing the scars, but about building something new and beautiful over them. But I knew the secret had to come out. It was a ticking time bomb, and the longer I waited, the more painful the explosion would be. I just didn't know how, or when, or what the fallout would be. But I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I couldn't use Veronica. My path forward had to be one of honesty, even if that honesty meant risking everything I had finally started to gain. The universe, it seemed, had grown tired of my cautious tightrope walk. It decided to introduce an element of chaos. The inevitable collision wasn't engineered by me, nor was it a grand revelation on my part. It was a chance encounter, brutal in its suddenness, and utterly shattering in its simplicity. Veronica and I were at a new art gallery opening, one she had been excited about. We were sipping wine, chatting easily, admiring a particularly abstract piece that looked like a splatter of paint, but cost more than my house. I was feeling good. I was with Veronica, I was out, I was even enjoying the art. For a moment, the past felt truly distant. Then I heard it. A familiar laugh, bright and clear, cutting through the low murmur of the crowd. My blood ran cold. My hand, which had been resting casually on Veronica's lower back, stiffened. "Alex, is that really you?" I turned slowly, my heart leaping into my throat. There she was, Sarah, standing 10 feet away, a half smile on her face, her eyes wide with surprise. She was wearing a flowing earth-tone dress, looking exactly like the evolved woman she claimed to be. And by her side, radiating his usual serene arrogance, was Kai. He raised an eyebrow, a slight, almost imperceptible smirk playing on his lips, as if amused by my sudden appearance in their enlightened sphere. Veronica, sensing my sudden tension, turned to follow my gaze. Her eyes landed on Sarah and Kai, and a polite professional smile immediately spread across her face. "Oh, Kai. Sarah, what a surprise to see you here." Sarah's eyes flickered from me to Veronica, then back to me, a flash of confusion and curiosity. Kai, too, seemed to register Veronica's presence with a professional nod, but his gaze was still fixed on me, a question in his eyes. "Veronica, this is Alex." I managed to stammer, my voice tight. "Alex, this is Sarah and Kai." The words felt like ash in my mouth. Veronica extended a hand to Sarah first, her smile unwavering. "So lovely to finally meet you, Sarah. Kai speaks so highly of your contributions to the studio's community outreach." Sarah's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. She took Veronica's hand, her eyes darting between us. You know Veronica?" she asked me, her voice tinged with a surprise that bordered on accusation. "Yes, we've been seeing each other," Veronica answered smoothly, her arms subtly linking with mine. Her move was a natural, affectionate gesture, but to Sarah it was clearly a declaration. The color drained from Sarah's face. Her eyes widened, a dawning comprehension slowly spreading across them. She looked at Veronica, then at Kai, then back at me, as if pieces of a puzzle were suddenly, horribly, clicking into place for her. Kai, too, seemed to register the implication. His serene facade cracked, just a hairline fracture, revealing a flicker of annoyance, perhaps even concern. "Veronica is my biggest sponsor, Alex," Kai said, his voice flat, devoid of its usual calming resonance. He wasn't introducing her to me. He was making a statement that had just been turned on its head. "Yes, I know," I replied, meeting his gaze directly. "We've had many interesting conversations about the business, and about you, actually." The last part was a low blow, I knew, but I couldn't help. The years of pain, the humiliation, the unexpected twist of fate, it all coiled within me, demanding release. Sarah gasped softly. "You are dating Veronica?" "The Veronica?" Her voice was a whisper of disbelief. "Yes, Sarah, I am," I said, my voice steady now, gaining strength. Surprise! A wry, bitter smile touched my lips. Tense silence descended, thick and suffocating. Even amidst the polite hum of the gallery, Sarah looked like a deer caught in headlights. Kai looked like he'd just swallowed a particularly sour lemon. Veronica, sensing the sudden inexplicable tension, looked between us all, her brow furrowed in confusion. "What's going on here?" Veronica asked, her voice calm but firm, her grip on my arm tightening imperceptibly. "Alex?" "Sarah." Sarah finally found her voice, a choked whisper. He's my ex-husband, Veronica. Kai and I, we're together now." She gestured vaguely between herself and Kai. Veronica's eyes widened, a look of profound shock replacing her earlier confusion. She turned to me, her grip on my arm loosening slightly, her gaze questioning, hurt, betrayed. "Alex, is this true? You were married to Sarah, and she left you for Kai?" Her voice was low, filled with disbelief. I nodded, unable to meet her gaze fully. "Yes, Veronica, I am sorry. I should have told you." The words were an inadequate apology for such a monumental deception. Sarah, recovering slightly, rounded on me, her eyes flashing with a mix of anger and something like fear. "Why, Alex? Why are you doing this? Are you trying to hurt us? Are you using her for revenge?" The direct accusation, the public nature of the confrontation, the hurt in Veronica's eyes. It all slammed into me at once. The fleeting satisfaction of the moment evaporated, replaced by a fresh wave of pain. Not for Sarah, but for the mess I had created, for the potential damage to my relationship with Veronica. "No, Sarah, it's not about revenge," I said, my voice heavy, with a truth I was only just realizing myself. "It started that way, maybe. Curiosity. A twisted coincidence. But it's not about that anymore. I care about Veronica." I turned to Veronica, my heart pounding, ready to lay bare the ugly truth, to risk everything for a chance at honesty. The fight with Sarah, the anger at Kai, it suddenly felt secondary. The only thing that mattered was Veronica's reaction, her trust, her understanding. The heartbreaking realization was not that Sarah was still in my life, but that I had jeopardized the best thing to happen to me since she left. The air in the gallery felt charged, thick with unspoken accusations and raw emotions. All eyes, it seemed, were on our little tableau. Sarah looked from me to Veronica, her face pale, a mixture of disbelief and accusation contorting her features. Boer, for his part, had retreated slightly, his arms crossed, a guarded expression on his face. He looked annoyed, yes, but also a little concerned. This wasn't just about my personal life, it was about his business. Veronica, however, was focused entirely on me. Her hand had dropped from my arm, and her eyes, usually so warm and kind, were now cool, distant, and filled with a hurt that twisted my gut. "You knew," she stated, her voice quiet, controlled, but laced with a profound sense of betrayal. "All this time, you knew, and you said nothing. I was going to tell you, Veronica. I swear," I pleaded, my voice rough with desperation. It's complicated. I was trying to figure out how." "Complicated?" she repeated, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "Alex, my biggest client, is the man your wife left you for, and you decided to date me. His primary sponsor, without mentioning a single thing? How is that not manipulative? How is that not manipulative? How is that not some twisted form of revenge?" Sarah, seizing the opportunity, chimed in. "He's always been like this, Veronica. Possessive. Unable to move on. This is just another one of his games. Stay out of this, Sarah," I snapped, turning to her. "This has nothing to do with you anymore." But it did. Of course it did. She was the epicenter of this whole disaster. "It has everything to do with me," Sarah retorted, her voice rising. "You are trying to ruin Kai, aren't you? You are using Veronica to get back at us." "I am not," I yelled back, the carefully constructed facade of the last few months crumbled. "I haven't done anything to him. I haven't tried to interfere with his business or with your spiritual path. I was trying to move on, Sarah. And then I met Veronica, and I genuinely started to care about her." I turned back to Veronica, trying to project every ounce of sincerity I felt. "Please, Veronica, believe me. What we have, what we're building, it's real. I wasn't just using you. I really like you. I really care about you." Veronica shook her head, a deep sigh escaping her. "How can I believe you, Alex? Every conversation we had about Kai, about Zen Flow, every time I vented about his quais, you were just gathering information, weren't you? Learning about him, maybe even plotting how to undermine him. It feels deceptive, like our whole relationship was built on a lie." The truth of her words stung. Because a part of me, the bitter, broken part from months ago, had indeed entertained those thoughts. But I had moved past them. Hadn't I? Kai, surprisingly, stepped forward, a calm returning to his features. "Perhaps we should all take a moment," he suggested, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. "This is clearly a sensitive situation. Alex, I understand your feelings. Sarah and we moved forward in a way that was probably difficult for you. But this seems unnecessary. He was trying to be the Zen master again, the peacemaker. It just made me more furious. Unnecessary? I laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. You took my wife, my life, and you call this unnecessary? You have no idea what I've been through. Sarah stepped closer to Kai, as if for protection. He never understood, she murmured more to Kai than to me. He was always so stuck. He couldn't evolve with me. Evolve? I spat the word, feeling like a betrayal all over again. You call leaving your husband of 5 years for your yoga instructor evolving? That's just selfish, Sarah. And cowardly. Veronica held up a hand, silencing us both. Her eyes, still on me, were now filled with a deep disappointment. Alex, I need time. I can't process this right now. Not here. She looked around the gallery, suddenly aware of the curious glances our shouting match was attracting. I need to go. She turned, not looking back, and walked swiftly towards the exit. Veronica, wait! I called out, my voice cracking. I wanted to go after her, to explain, to beg her to listen. But Kai was blocking my path, a subtle, almost imperceptible shift in his stance. And Sarah was looking at me with a mixture of anger and a flicker of something new. Pity, perhaps, or even a touch of regret. Let her go, Alex, Kai said, his voice quiet. She needs space. As do we all. I stood there, frozen, watching Veronica disappear into the crowd. The gallery, which had moments ago seemed so vibrant, now felt cold and empty. My anger at Sarah and Kai was still there, but it was overshadowed by a crushing wave of despair. I had finally found something good, something real, and my past, my own lingering deceptions, had just shattered it. The heartbroken feeling was no longer about Sarah's betrayal. It was about my own failure, my own complicity in the mess, and the agonizing thought that I might have just lost Veronica forever. The initial pain of Sarah leaving had been sharp, immediate. This pain was different, a dull, aching throb, born of self-recrimination, and the realization of what I stood to lose. This was what true heartbreak felt like. Not just the loss of something external, but the loss of a future I had finally dared to imagine. The next few days were a different kind of hell. Not the despair of Sarah leaving, but the agonizing uncertainty of losing Veronica. I called her. I texted her. Nothing. Complete silence. It was worse than an argument. It was an absence. A void. I deserved it, I knew. I had held on to that secret for too long. David came over again, finding me slumped on the couch. But this time, it was a different kind of slump. Less depression, more self-loathing. I explained what happened, the dramatic confrontation, Veronica's hurt reaction. You messed up, man, he said, shaking his head. You should have just told her from the start. That's a huge thing to keep from someone. I know, I mumbled, burying my face in my hands. I know. I didn't want to lose her. And it felt so complicated. Complicated doesn't mean dishonest, Alex, he said, gently but firmly. You have to tell her the whole truth, everything, and then you have to let her decide. His words echoed what I already knew. I couldn't just wallow. I had to face this head on, no matter how painful. I owed Veronica that much. 2 days later, still no word from her. I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I drove to her office, waited downstairs, pacing until I saw her leave for lunch. My heart hammered against my ribs. Veronica, I called out, jogging to catch up with her. She stopped, turning slowly. Her face was guarded, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes, a tired resignation. Alex, I don't think this is a good idea. Please, just 5 minutes, I pleaded. I need to explain. I need to tell you everything. She hesitated, then sighed. Fine, but just 5 minutes. We went to a small, quiet park bench. I took a deep breath and poured it all out. The shock of Sarah leaving, the despair, the accidental social media stalking, finding out about Kai's biggest sponsor, the bizarre coincidence of meeting her, my initial cynical motivations, the slow, confusing realization that I genuinely liked her, that she was making me feel alive again, and the overwhelming fear of losing her if I told her the truth. I held nothing back. I confessed the vengeful thoughts, the moments of dark plotting, and how meeting her, truly getting to know her, had made me realize how wrong that path was. I know I messed up, Veronica, I finished, my voice raw. I should have told you, and I hate myself for hurting you. But what we built, for me, it was real. You helped me get out of a very dark place, and I wasn't using you. Not after the first few dates, I fell for you, Veronica. Hard, and the thought of losing you, now that I found you, is more heartbreaking than anything Sarah ever did. She listened, her expression unreadable. When I finished, the silence stretched between us, thick with the weight of my confession. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft. It's a lot, Alex. It's a truly unbelievable story. She paused. And you kept it from me, that's the part that hurts, the lack of trust. I know, I whispered. And I am so incredibly sorry. She looked at me, really looked at me, her eyes searching mine. I need to think. This changes everything. My professional relationship with Kai, my personal life, it's all tangled up now. And I don't know if I can untangle it, or if I even want to. I understand, I said, my voice barely audible. Just please, don't write me off. Give me a chance to earn your trust back, if you want me to. I'll do whatever it takes. She gave a small, sad smile. Go home, Alex. I'll call you when I am ready. It was a small ray of hope, a fragile thread. It wasn't a rejection, but it wasn't a promise either. I went home feeling a strange mix of dread and relief. The truth was out. The burden of the secret was lifted. Now the outcome was out of my hands. The phone rang 2 days later. It was Veronica. My heart leaped. Alex, she said, her voice still cautious. I've thought a lot about it. And I've decided to give you another chance. But it's going to take time to rebuild that trust. A lot of time. A wave of relief so profound washed over me that my knees felt weak. Thank you, Veronica, thank you. I promise I won't let you down. One condition, she said. No more secrets ever. About anything. And you have to talk to Sarah. What? I asked, surprised. Why? 'Cause this is a mess, Alex. And for us to move forward, you need to have some kind of closure, some kind of understanding with your past. Not just for your sake, but for mine. I don't want to be caught in the middle of this forever. It was a tough pill to swallow, but she was right. A week later, I arranged to meet Sarah at a neutral coffee shop. Just us. No Kai, no Veronica. It was awkward. Tense. We sat across from each other, two strangers who once shared everything. Veronica told me you two talked, she said, her voice quiet. She's very upset. Yeah, well, so am I replied honestly. And it's not a game, Sarah, I actually care about her. We talked for a long time. Not about Kai, not about blame, but about us. About how we drifted apart, about her need for something more, about my inability to see it. There were tears on her part and on mine. Not tears of love for her, not anymore, but tears for the loss of what we had, for the pain we had inflicted on each other. She admitted she handled things badly, that she should have been more upfront, more honest. I admitted I was too focused on my own life to truly see her. We even acknowledged that perhaps we just weren't meant to evolve together. It wasn't a grand reconciliation. It was a messy, painful, but ultimately necessary conversation. When we finally parted ways, there was no embrace, no promise of friendship, just a quiet understanding, a letting go. The ghost of Sarah, the one that haunted my house and my mind, finally, truly began to fade. My relationship with Veronica slowly, painstakingly began to heal. There were still moments of doubt, moments when she'd test me, when I had to prove my honesty. But we were building something new, brick by brick, foundation by foundation. It wasn't perfect, it was scarred, but it was real, and it was mine. I still saw Kai sometimes at events Veronica had to attend, or in passing. He never directly acknowledged me, maintaining his aloof guru persona. Sarah occasionally messaged me, polite updates about her life. I responded in kind. The raw pain was gone, replaced by a dull ache, a scar that reminded me of what I had been through, but no longer defined me. The heartbreak hadn't been a single event, but a long, winding journey through betrayal, anger, desperation, and ultimately self-discovery. Sarah, leaving me for her yoga instructor, had shattered my world. But it was in the debris of that broken world, in the most unlikely and complicated of circumstances, that I had found a chance at a new beginning. A beginning that was, finally, truly my own.